This Justin! I noticed that you guys do like when I comment about video games, which I didn't really realize you guys enjoyed. I'll take it. But yeah, this video is by Hero Hey. And it's called Journalists Rage Over... Gamers over Ubisoft's downfall. So, we're gonna find out about that.
As you probably know, there's been some major Ubisoft news occurring over the last 24 hours or so, stuff that we also talked about in the second segment of the day yesterday, so if you saw that, you should be in the loop with everything. But just to recap super quick, AC Shadows has been delayed to February 2025, Ubisoft admits that Outlaws is underselling, and in a message released to investors, Ubisoft addresses a number of issues at the company and outlines some changes that they're going to try to help fix them.
I mean, that part's good, right? Your game's not doing well and you're trying to address the issues. Okay, so why will journalists rage at this? What make people angry here?
Following an internal probe also going on at Ubisoft to try and understand why the company has been failing so massively over the last number of years. And finally, Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot. Did I get the name right that time? Well, he's made a statement saying that Ubisoft really doesn't have an agenda, and this particular statement has actually enraged a number of armchair activists and similar type of journalists.
Well, yeah, because it's like everyone knows you have an agenda. And by the way, like, it's not bad if you want to go for something moral in a story. Like, for example, I always say that, oh my gosh, Crab's Lost Treasure, it's got a huge theme of pollution, right? It's very prevalent. It's a huge part of the story you can't ignore, right? But the game is good, so it's not leaning on that to be a reason it succeeds.
We're going to be going over in this video, as it should be very entertaining, so I hope you're ready, and let's enjoy. We start with Paul Tassi, who's responding to Stefan Totilo, who said, from CEO, regarding polarized comments around Ubisoft, I want to reaffirm that we are an entertainment-first company, creating games for the broadest possible audience, and our goal is not to push any specific agenda. We remain committed to creating games that everyone can enjoy. That being the statement from Yves that I mentioned earlier, and Paul Tassi responds saying, it is embarrassing, Ubisoft is admitting, that they're actually rattled by the culture war stuff.
Oh my god. Polarized comments around it. Okay, so one, no matter what, okay, all right, I'm not saying that the criticism isn't deserved, it is. But if you're on Twitter, like, what do you expect? I think what makes me laugh is that they really victimize themselves, like, we get such bad polarizing comments. It's like, it's Twitter, my dude. Where do you think you are? People are being mean to me because they don't like the game and they're telling me it's problems.
For Outlaws and Shadows. He had more to say than that, but before we get to that, let me share my opinion on this. Just simplifying all of these issues into culture war stuff seems like a very odd take by Paul Tassi, because this situation involves people in Japan talking about their country being disrespected, as they're also lied to by a massive corporation regarding their own history. But apparently to Paul Tassi, all of this is just culture war stuff. Now, if you're not familiar with...
See, this is what I mean. Like, if you didn't want criticism over real events and to be in a quote-unquote culture war, then don't base your game off of actual history.
Paul Tassi, he's often been criticized in gaming circles for numerous takes that he's made over the years that seem dismissive of the issues people have with things such as DEI. For example, back when Ubisoft issued their apology to the Japanese community, Paul Tassi had this to say: when the hyper-forced pushback to your game is the not Japanese culture war talking point of you putting a DI samurai in your game, I would not engage with these people at all. So it also looks like he has a history of dismissing the issues that Japanese people have with AC Shadows. This is, of course, just one more example. I don't want to go through all this guy's tweets, just giving you a little...
Yeah, well, it's like, it's obvious from the get-go that he doesn't care about their culture, right? Because it's like, there are so many different historical figures you could choose, and you choose one that is not important and wasn't a samurai, from my understanding. You know what I mean? So even in the setting they picked, the guy does not fit, you know, the, what do you call it? The assignment they gave him, right? So I really truly think they may not have minded. Like, I don't think it's a problem he's black. I think it's a problem that they chose a black guy for the samurai of, like, this really prominent figure in this time period, and he did not really exist. If he did, it wouldn't seem like you were ham-fisting a freaking culture war into something, right? It's like, you did this. There's so many real people you could have chosen.
A little bit more context. It's a truly bizarre thing how many armchair activist types and journalists, etc., are in complete denial about the failures of DEI.
Yes, Yasuke existed, but he was not a samurai, is my point. What I'm saying is the role they gave him is not accurate. Because the thing is that people were very excited, I think, to have the samurai-themed Assassin's Creed. So when they finally got it, and it's like, they also toted it for being historically accurate, right? A lot of their branding and selling is about like, oh, this is accurate, and we wanna like represent these people correctly, and we really like adore the time period, and then they get it wrong, right? It just feels like they're spitting in their face, right?
In my opinion, DI is largely something that companies have tried to use for profit motives, attempts to appeal to ESG funds, and things like that. So whenever I see someone defending those sort of practices, to me, they just come off as massive corporate bootlickers. Now, as DI has been failing and actually been costing these corporations more and more money in many cases, the topic comes up more and more. And we see more people criticizing that stuff, as well as more people like Paul Tassi seemingly attempting to dismiss those criticisms. Another example of this, albeit perhaps to a lesser extent, were some of the takes that he was making during Concord, where he seemed to be in denial of sorts about the game's terrible player count after launch, wondering if it was even just a glitch or something.
Yeah, this is the other thing, right? If you are a person that people perceive as somebody who makes lots of money, right? You have the power to change these things, and you are doing extremely well, and you've made how many games, and now you're complaining? Like, nobody likes that.
It's like it's impossible for some people to admit the issues with the character roster. And now practices such as DEI largely contributed to a number of issues with the game. Now, I'm not saying that all of the issues with Concord were simply DEI.
My favorite is his outward denial, right? Because, like, I think about some indie games. Oh, I'm trying to remember which ones they were. But have you guys followed, like, an indie game, like, when it gets published and there's, like, maybe bugs or whatever? And then you see a post on, like, their Twitter, like, hey, we're aware that there is an issue with this part of the game, or we're aware that you don't like this system, we're working on changing it. Like, whenever you hear criticism, a lot of times, especially on indie games, they will address it and be like, oh, man, we're so sorry that you didn't like it. We're gonna try to change it. We realize we disappointed our players with this mechanic, right? And so when you hear that type of, like, humble, like, dialogue with players, and then you see this, it's like, what in the actual shit? How ungrateful can you be? And now you're sitting here like, I knew this wouldn't go well, but this is legitimately weird. It's so weird it's not doing well. Suicide, and this is so weird, Suicide Squad launched with 20 times as many players. That's what you're comparing yourself to? That's what you want your success metric to be? Like, hello?
Of issues with the game. Now, I'm not saying that all of the issues with Concord were simply DI related. For example, the price point in the saturated market, sure, these were also contributing factors to Concord's massive failure.
Oh yeah,
but when you see people ignoring the DI related issues as well, it comes off as ignorant or bad faith. And for those that don't know, the person Paul Tassi was talking to in those screenshots, Gene Park, who was also seemingly in denial in their own way, claims to be affiliated with the Washington Post. Anyways, back to the current news with Ubisoft and Paul Tassi's takes on this stuff going on right now. He added this to his other tweet, saying,
oh my god, it's embarrassing Ubisoft is admitting they're actually rattled by the culture stuff. Oh, okay, so this is so weird. Sorry, I thought that this was for, what do you call it? Assassin's Creed, but it's not. And this just makes me laugh. It's embarrassing Ubisoft is admitting they're actually rattled by the culture war stuff. That is something.
Outlaws could have starred a guy who looks like Han Solo, and Shadows could have starred a guy who looks like Jin Sakai, and I do not think it would meaningfully change the fortunes of either of those games.
Oh, is he just a journalist? Then why does he care so much? It's so weird how he's like, oh, I'm so surprised this game isn't doing well.
I think this would be a larger contributing factor to AC Shadows. Star Wars Outlaws has a number of other issues aside from people just not liking the MC.
But the game's not even out yet. Oh, like, well, I guess Concord came out. Never mind, maybe there was a paycheck, I don't know.
A lot of people said that the gameplay was just boring, especially the stealth segments, which is a large part of the game. And that you didn't feel all that much like an outlaw. Like, you were very limited in the so-called immoral stuff that you could do in the game itself. Of course, there's also been numerous glitches, and these are just
Man, that sounds like another game that I had this complaint over.
Brief examples of some of the issues that people have with Star Wars Outlaws. But for Paul Tassi to suggest that having an actual Japanese male lead for AC Shadows wouldn't meaningfully change the fortune of the game seems like an absolutely insane thing to say. And once again, it also seems dismissive.
It's because, okay, I think that the problem is everybody is just using the buzzword that this guy is, you know, black and not Asian. The reason that's a problem isn't is only because it's not historically accurate, right? If there was more than one prominent figure in Japan of different ethnicities, it may not matter. You know what I'm saying? It's the fact that all of them were, yeah, it's tokenism. It's the fact that this isn't realistic. And that's why it's annoying.
Towards the issues that many people in Japan, many Japanese people, have with the game. It's really odd that Paul Tassi seems to have a recurring theme where he's very dismissive towards the issues that Japanese people have towards AC Shadows. I do think there's other issues that AC Shadows has. I mean, there's clearly other reasons why Ubisoft delayed the game. The probability of them changing Yasuke at this point seems near 0%. So there's probably other things that they're trying to polish, which also falls in line with the other parts of the statement that they made. Also, as I mentioned yesterday, there's also just a general negative perception and a loss of goodwill that Ubisoft has had. So perhaps they're going to try and spend the next few months trying to recover some goodwill at least before.
Yeah, so here's the other problem, right? Usually when there is one big red flag problem with a game that like shows that they didn't really do their research or they didn't really care for the thing that they are covering, right? It puts bad faith in them, right? People start to not trust what they are putting out when they say like, we want to cover this time in Japanese history and we want it, you know, we want to do it justice and it's going to be accurate, right? It's like they set the precedent that they're going to do that. So when they absolutely whiff that, it makes you question everything else.
Releasing AC Shadows. The point I'm making here is there's other issues going on with AC Shadows besides just Yasuke. But again, Yasuke is certainly a huge factor. All of this leads us to an article that Paul Tassi wrote today for Forbes titled, "After Assassin's Creed Shadows Delay, Ubisoft Acknowledges Outlaws Issue, Anti-Woke Pushback." It's funny that he complains about culture war stuff even when that label is oversimplifying the issues going on and is also, as I mentioned, rather dismissive towards the issues at large. But then he's also going to simultaneously write an article that's like, oh, it's just anti-woke pushback. Seems like this guy is actually propagating culture war stuff, if anything. The article goes over some of the stuff that we've already covered here in this video and others, so I'm skipping all that. And let's check out this.
See, this is a problem. It's that whenever you see a journalist article that wants clicks and is desperate, you see these buzzwords like woke, agenda, you know? Very big clickbaity words, and it's like, okay, well, now we know that you really, really want to capitalize on the subject matter, not that you really care for it.
Section where he writes, "Then, Ubisoft surprisingly, tacitly acknowledged the narrative that its games have become too woke or agenda-driven, according to a segment of the internet." And posting that statement from Eves where he denies...
And I love it. It's like the sweeping general statements. It's games. Sorry, we weren't talking about like a broad brushstroke of games. We're talking about your one game having its one problem. It's not like all of a sudden like these gamers just, you know, came up and they were like, we've hated all the games and all of them have been... we haven't liked all of them. It's like, no, the game you're going to release has a problem, not its games.
Ubisoft having any specific agenda. He then writes, while Ubisoft already apologized to its Japanese audiences over some questionable promotional materials for Shadows, the pushback was also about the inclusion of Yasuke as one of the two leads, a legendary black samurai, where there was an ensuing debate of whether he was actually a samurai, and a stated idea that it shouldn't be starring him at all. It's pretty funny that despite all of the evidence coming out that Yasuke really wasn't conclusively a samurai, something that Ubisoft themselves has also admitted, here's Paul Tassi claiming he was not just a samurai, but a legendary one. He goes on.
See, this is the other problem. You know, it's not accurate that he was a samurai, which is a huge point. He's the main character in the game where he is one.
To write, there was similar pushback to Kay Vess leading Star Wars Outlaws as a woman, and a not attractive enough woman at that. So he's really not going to mention that the main issue here was that Ubisoft made her less attractive. Like they went out of their way to make Kay Vess less attractive than the actress that she's based on. Something that's very bizarre and certainly worth pointing out, but hey, Paul Tassi ain't going to mention that part here. He then says, no historical accuracy complaints there, as it was pretty straightforward woke/DI talking.
See, this is what I mean. Like there was similar pushback for Star Wars Outlaws as a woman. The problem was not that she was a woman. The problem was the game was bad. Like you're missing the point here again. Like, oh, there was a similar pushback for this wonderful game with no other problems, and it's because she was a woman. It's like you're missing the point again.
Points there, but it is surprising to see Ubisoft entertain this at all. There's another article I found that has very odd coverage, to say the least, regarding all this Ubisoft stuff. This one from fastcompany.com. The author Chris Morris writing, video game maker Ubisoft in chaos after anti-DEI backlash.
Oh my god. Again, this like really makes it seem like they just woke up one morning and like all of these like mindless zombie people just, you know, got infected by the woke virus and started attacking. What it truly is just like a criticism they just refuse to acknowledge or change. And so people just continue not to like it.
The Assassin's Creed game maker delayed its biggest launch of the year, reduced forecasts, and is facing calls to sell in what is being called an incel victory. Okay, first of all, I haven't seen anyone say incel victory.
I don't think those words go together. I don't think that goes together
anywhere. Seems like this guy just made that up. And once again, I'll point out how these sort of people come off as such bigots, man. Dismissing the issues that Japanese people have with this game. Very reasonable and understandable issues. And then saying this is like an incel victory, seriously? These virtue signaler types are so hypocritical. And they're also just weird. I mean, who even talks like that? Oh, it's an incel victory. Like either this guy made...
who are trying to like have a, you know, they're trying to check mark all the boxes for like the hot buzzwords that people might type in so they could get like the lowest common denominator people to read it.
That up, or this must be some like terminally online Redditor talk here or something. Moving on. Because, spoiler alert, it's as bad in the article itself or arguably even worse. He pulls out the classic, oh, the backlash is just from the far right. My
oh boy,
gosh,
there
these
it is.
people
There's
are
another buzzword. Now it's got to be political. We can't just have criticism. The game can't be bad. It's got to be something weird in their brains. And you know what's funny about it is like when they say that it's like, oh, it's the far right or it's something else or whatever. It's like they're implying that the viewers just had an agenda they're walking blindly with, when it's like they're the one with an agenda, so like that's what type of criticism they're getting.
With their rhetoric, saying the same nonsense for years and years and years, and they wonder why people don't listen to them anymore. Check it out. Right here he says, the bookings shortfall was technically due to the delay and disappointing sales of Star Wars Outlaws. However, the underlying reason for both of those, at least in part, is the...
They don't like when we include people. They don't like when we include other, you know, races and genders and things. That's gotta be the reason. Not because our game is bad. Insert a dude into Star Wars Outlaws. The game would still be, like, not good.
Far right opposition to diversity and inclusion. Oh my gosh, what a joke. Yeah, diversity and inclusion, something that corporations love to gaslight people about. Oh, hey, we really care about this stuff. Not really. We just want money. But hey.
See, this is what I mean. Like, this can happen in any type of game. It doesn't have to just be, like, diverse characters, right? Have you ever seen a game where the highlight is the attractive women? And the game ends up being bad, and like all you see before the game releases is how attractive the women are. Now, obviously that doesn't mean that the attractive woman in this case is the reason the game is bad, but it's a sign that that's the only thing they're showing you, that like it might be bad. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like equating them with being the problem is not really good, but they can signal an issue of things that are going on underneath it.
You criticize these corporations, you're apparently far right for criticizing corruption in corporations. He goes on to say, Outlaws, which has a female lead character, received mostly solid reviews from professional critics. Oh, professional critics. But many players gave it a 0 rating out of 10 on Metacritic, citing quote-unquote forced DI narratives and claiming the developers, quote, spent more time on the woke culture than on the story and gameplay, unquote. Some players were also unhappy with the optional season pass model that tacked an additional 40...
Yeah, they also did, like, here's another thing, right? Just like the fact that they're ham-fisting something in the game and they're showcasing it more than the actual gameplay or why the game is good, right? No matter what it is, whether it's like, oh, look at how attractive this character is. Oh, but don't look at the gameplay. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't want to sit here and say that it's not a problem that they chose Yasuke over everyone else. It absolutely is, but this is more prominent than, like, just this game. This is only one example of how you can do something like that in bad faith. That is, like, a sign that they didn't focus on the game itself. And it's like they focused on the monetization first and the game second.
Bucks onto the game's price for extra missions. The review bombing, driven by anti-DI backlash, seemingly worked and set off a chain of events that led to Wednesday's announcement. I forgot to mention this. In the intro of the article, he says, Ubisoft abruptly canceled its appearance at the Tokyo Game Show and postponed all press previews of the upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadows. Wednesday, we learned why. Anti-DI backlash has sent the company spinning.
No, being able to listen to any type of criticism or change how you're doing things and just, like, going forward with your eyes closed. Like you're a victim to like mindless people who don't actually represent the people you're selling the game to is the problem.
So for one, as funny as that
Enough
is,
cope to
there's
pave a
also a lot
highway.
more going on with Ubisoft than the anti-DI stuff. Like, for example, they've been mismanaged heavily for years. But leave it up to this so-called journalist veteran to not acknowledge that and to try and smear all of the Ubisoft critics as a bunch of far-right incels as he seemingly attempts to defend this massive corrupt corporation. And that's about all that I have to say on this topic. Just truly bizarre stuff from these journalists. However, I suppose that's to be expected in this day and age. And
I just think they want to take it's like all attention is good attention with journos, right? So I wonder if really they are taking the unpopular side just to like have more clicks and interactions and like it just seems like journos are very desperate. I don't know.
Part of why they're now such a disgraced profession. Let me know what you think about all of this stuff in the comments. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and if you enjoyed my coverage, consider liking and or subscribing to the channel for more, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. Anyways, that was a good video. It was a little bit more like serious and stuff, but I still think it's just crazy. The clickbaity words and stuff, it just seems desperate. I really wonder if they believe any of it. Like, maybe they actually do.